Florida's highest stakes political dominoes game is the wild, rampant speculation about the 2010 election lineup. Who's running for what? It all rises or falls on popular Governor Charlie Crist. Does he stay put or opt for the U.S. Senate? We'll talk about political dominoes and Florida's depressing fiscal crisis with our guests, Mary Ellen Klas, Bureau Chief of the Miami Herald, and Aaron Deslatte, Bureau Chief of the Orlando Sentinel. Well, let's start out by talking about the king of the dominoes, Governor Charlie Crist, 73% approval rating. Whatever he does affects everybody else.
Well, he certainly sounds as if he is ready to consider running for the U.S. Senate race, something that everyone had speculated about. He finally this week said, I will make my decision after the session. That effectively freezes the Republican field, but opens the dominoes, as you say, for everybody else to consider. All right, do I position myself to run for governor? We've got Alex Sink and Marco Rubio, already thinking about that. And then, it just goes on.
But who goes from being chief executive of the fourth largest state, a pretty good gig even in troublesome times, to one of 100 legislators?
Well, from Crist's perspective, he's a blue chip stock. I mean, he really can't lose. If he comes out of this and decides, I'm not going to run for U.S. Senate, his stock goes up regardless because he's this hot, elusive recruit that the U.S. Senate has been trying to chase. So he really can't lose no matter if he runs or doesn't. Well,
during this freeze, if the chips look like they're going to fall in the direction of the governor getting in the Senate contest, Alex Sink is going to move forward a lot sooner than people thought for this governor's race.
Absolutely. She talked about running for governor whenever the topic was running for the U.S. Senate. So clearly she has her eye on that office.
But going back to your freeze on the Republican side, doesn't it make it hard for them to get out of the gates?
It really does. And especially when money is already being difficult for them to raise. We've seen reports that has pretty much put a dampening effect on anyone getting into any races down ballot. So it's pretty evident that this is going to be tough for whatever the governor does. He's not leaving, his wake is going to be pretty wide.
And what about this wild scenario where in an open governor's seat, Jeb Bush decides to come back to the job he liked pretty good for the 8 years he was in it?
No constitutional requirement that he can't do that. Certainly he called it the best job in the world. So that's clearly something he would probably rather do than run for the U.S. Senate if those are his only two options.
Was there anything more fun talking about than Florida politics, even in a tough economy?
Right.
Well, let's segue into that tough economy. We have a noted economist this week, Dave Denslow, using terms, dramatic terms, not normally heard from his usually staid personality.
Right. He told a House committee, a series of House committees, that we are near, what we're facing is not the Great Depression, but it's close to it. And then he rattled off all the reasons why Florida is really in a structural change. And when you think about that, it's no surprise that somebody like Charlie Crist may want to say, well, let me just hopscotch on the ballot and run in the U.S. Senate. It is going to be tough to provide any kind of leadership.
Well, speaking of leadership, Aaron, what kind of leadership are we getting out of the executive and legislative branches about this economic crisis?
We're seeing measured leadership because everybody wants to do something slightly different than everybody else. Governor wants to rely on federal stimulus. The House wants to potentially look at some ways to help businesses grow and streamline business regulation, and the Senate is talking about tax increases.
With revenues continuing to drop and expenses getting cut some more, at some point the T word is going to surface in this legislative session, isn't it?
Oh, it's already up. In my brief tenure covering politics, I have never seen going into a session this much uncertainty. You've got potential for tax increases, the potential for business regulation easing, the potential for a mass federal bailout. All of those factors could come together at the end of the day and solve the problem. But you don't know which one is going to be the dominant theme of the session.
And very quickly from both of you, is the stimulus money out of Washington likely to help us that much?
I think it will help us, but it's going to be a short, the bottom line is it's going to be a short-term fix. The problems that have resulted are still going to be there.
All right, we're going to go to your respective power play of the week. Aaron.
I'm going to be a homer and go with Representative Dean Cannon from Winter Park. He was in the center of the circle of House leaders who helped negotiate this power shift that took place over the weekend where Speaker Ray Sansom agreed to temporarily step down. When that didn't work, they negotiated a new deal where he was going to permanently step down and be replaced with Larry Creedle.
Okay.
And I'm going to go with Charlie Crist with his opportunity.
King of the dominoes.
King of the dominoes, right? And the fact that he is he kind of opens the door for not having to come up to us for a solution in the short term on the economy.
All right, Ellen Klas, Aaron Deslatte, thank you very much. For the latest political news, go to the Safety Review, and we'll see you next time on Power Play.